Clerk, call roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Jerry Dickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Jim Eason from the Paradox Church in Fort Worth. Thank you very much for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Father, thank you that you are a God that considers us. You are mindful of us. Nothing is too big for you, and nothing is too small. You are a God that hears us because of Jesus, who himself saves us from ourselves. You are the God who directs our path, even as we plan our steps. Wisdom, God, is found in you. You are just and right, good and gracious. You defend the powerless. You care for the orphan. You love the widow. The king's hearts are like a stream of water in your hands, and you turn us wherever you will. And so will you give us wisdom. Give us wisdom that we might be a blessing to this city and its people. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Morning, Mr. Manius.
Good morning, Your Honor. Members of the court, good morning. We have two announcements related to the agenda this morning. The first is under the Juvenile Services section. It's item 9F11. This is a consent item. We're asked that it be removed from the agenda. We have already taken action on that particular item, and there's no need to take action on it today. Also, members of the court, under item 11A, which is the approval of the claims and the addendum, there was a correction on the addendum that we provided you all this morning. And so whenever we consider that, you'll just simply authorize and approve the amended addendum. And with that, Your Honor, we have several public hearings this morning, and we'll come to those at that point in the agenda.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of August the 28th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of we have a proclamation, and then we have our employee recognition. The proclamation is on National Preparedness Month. I believe David, our emergency manager, there, David, come on down, sir. And I know you've got some other folks with you. Matt.
Actually, they're out
they're out working?
They're out doing a job for a change.
Now, I say that and I'll get in trouble, but I'm glad you said that. We appreciate everything y'all have done, and I know it's been unusual with between the fires and the rain and everything else going on. So I'll read this and then I'll bring it down and present it to you. Whereas National Preparedness Month, an event founded after the tragedy of 9/11 to increase preparedness in the U.S., creates an important opportunity for every resident of Tarrant County to prepare their homes, businesses, and communities for any type of an emergency, including natural disasters and potential terrorist attacks. And whereas investing in the preparedness of ourselves, our families, businesses, and communities can reduce fatalities and economic devastation in our communities and in our nation. And whereas Tarrant County is working closely with its planning and response partners, including municipalities, private organizations, volunteer agencies, community groups, and education providers, to increase public activities in preparing for emergencies and to educate individuals on how to take action. And whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every citizen of Tarrant County, and all citizens are urged to make preparedness a priority and work together as a team to ensure that individuals, families, and communities are prepared for the disaster and emergencies of any type. And whereas all citizens of Tarrant County are encouraged to participate in citizens' preparedness activities to become more prepared by taking 3 simple steps. Get an emergency supply kit, make a plan for what to do in an emergency, and be informed by and identifying sources of information in your community that will be helpful before, during, and after an emergency. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim September 2018 as National Preparedness Month and encourage all citizens and businesses to develop their own emergency preparedness plan and work together toward creating a more prepared society. In witness whereof, we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 4th day of September 2018. I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Turn around then.
Gotta go with that.
Yeah, we know that.
Thank you very much.
Any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the court, very much for this. This is something we do all year long. It's just nice to be able to come up here. It's hard to believe that 1 year ago today we were up here talking about Hurricane Harvey. You know, and time really goes by. Sounds like Tropical Storm Gordon's going to miss us and go off into Louisiana, Mississippi, so we may get some more rain that we had this weekend later on this week. But we're always striving to be prepared, and we appreciate your support in all the things that we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of what our folks do, in addition to being prepared for whatever type of disaster or challenge that we may have, is prepare to help others. And in the case of Harvey that was mentioned earlier, we had a number of people, really from cities as well as from all over the county, go down and help last year. But in addition to that, we had folks that came up here. And a lot of times, you know, we're, I'll knock on wood, we're not usually tremendously impacted by hurricanes as far as the actual weather itself. But we do oftentimes have an opportunity to help folks, sometimes for a short period of time, sometimes for a longer period of time, when those disasters do occur along the Gulf. And we appreciate very much you and your department and the way you work with other agencies, not only just in Tarrant County, but really throughout the region. And I know you're very critical and work very hard with the COG and with all of the counties, cities, and folks around this metroplex as we prepare for hopefully things sometimes that will, you know, we have our exercises and things that hopefully never will happen, but we've still got to be prepared so that in the case that they do, we are prepared. So thank you and your department. Now it comes my time to mispronounce all your names. We will go through the exercise of the employee recognition for you rookies, for you new 5-year people. The way we do this is I call your name or what may sound like your name, and you stand up and then remain standing for that group, and then we'll recognize you again at the end, and you can take your seats. I try, but it's, I really need to give some entertainment to these 4 folks around me, and I usually do that at least once a month. And so as I call your name or what sounds like it, or if it's in the alphabetic part of where you think it should be, then you stand up, and maybe I'll pause and let you pronounce it correctly, or maybe I'll just keep right on going. We'll start off with our 5-year employees, and the first one is Derek Bassey from Juvenile Services. Okay. Jennifer Brown from the Sheriff's Department. There's Jennifer.
You did good on that one.
Homero, yeah, you knew what you saw what was coming next. Homero Carnero? Okay, did I come anywhere? Yeah, that's what I said. I was right on that one. Kayvon Charles, Public Health.
That's Kayvon.
Nyla Coleman, Sheriff's Department.
This one's going to be tough.
Tuan Do. Did I do all right?
Dow. Not dough. Dow.
Dow.
Right? Tuan Dow.
We're going to start separating these out. Daiquiri Devers, Precinct 4. You got her back at the office working? You wouldn't let her come out?
Right.
Angel Donato Jr., Sheriff's Department. James Doring, Sheriff's Department. Teresa Gallagher, Public Health Department. Jamie Gaza, Precinct 1. Carolyn Goodspeed, Public Health Department. Ashley Gregory, Tax Office.
That's our new JP's wife.
That's what, that might that be him sitting right next to her?
It is.
You think that might be him? Congratulations, congratulations. Gloria Lavalier, okay, that one, there's a L in there that I missed that is not supposed to be in there.
You got Gloria, right?
Yeah, there you go. Kenneth Mankins, Sheriff's Department. Brian Malaskenko, yeah, that was another one. How'd I do? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. You were close.
I got this next one. Amy Nelson, Public Health Department.
Good job.
Thank your mother for naming you Amy. Arnie Palacios, Public Health Department. Was it Palacios?
Palacios.
See, you're not so good either. Robert Peters, Domestic Relations. Robert, thank you. Tina Rangel, Public Health. Annabelle Scott, Public Health. Diana Sinek, Information Technology. Jefferson Smith, Sheriff's Department. Marcela Torres, Public Health Department. Christopher Valentin, Artine, Sheriff's Department. J.C. Walker, 236th District Court. Arjetta Watson, Public Health Department. These are our 5-year employees. Let's give them a big hand. Thank y'all. You can be seated. I tell these rookies. Now for you 10-year employees. Kamisha Bailey, Community Development. You brought your own chair department. Brian Bond, Sheriff's Department. Linda Brown, Sheriff's Department. Denise Del Carmen, Public Health. Carlos Gonzalez, Facilities Manager. Jennifer Herpel, Sheriff's Department. Deetra Keel, Medical Examiner's Office. Florestan Mack, Public Health. I'm not sure I did so good on that first name. Florestan.
Hey, Flo.
So it was Flo. I got that part right. Michael McNicholas, Sheriff's Department. Brooke Panthus. I didn't do too well on that one either, did I? How was good. It's good. Patrick Wilson, Facilities Management. Those are our 10-year employees. Let's give them a hand. Now for our 15-year employees. Tiffany Burks, Criminal District Attorney's Office.
Yes, she is.
Sean Martin Gray, Constable, Precinct 5. Michelle LaRue, Sheriff's Department. David Sandella, Sheriff's Department. These are our 15-year employees. Now for our 20-year employees, Deidre Clark, County Clerk's Office. Mark Fisher, Information Technology. Vernon Leonard, Information Technology. Janice Pledger, Domestic Relations Office. These are our 20-year employees. Now for our 25 plus, some of them I called today. Some of them I called yesterday. It was one of those tight-fitting weekends. A lot of stuff going on. I do try to call for those of y'all who receive the phone calls. I do try to call on the weekends where you're not, busy work or when I used to call during the week, I would hear people in the background saying, "Oh, it's Judge Whitley." And then they would start kind of needle them, or they would sit there and listen to what they were saying, neither of which I really wanted them doing. So I try to call on the weekend for the most part, and sometimes we just don't get it done till real late. Our first person that we're going to recognize today is Sarita Daniel, 25 years. Sarita, there she is. She started in the sheriff's office as a clerk at Belknap and moved over to the kitchen as a detention officer. She was in security control, was promoted to corporal and went back and was over the kitchen there for a while, and then was promoted to sergeant and assigned to the booking area. When I asked her about her most memorable day, she said it was the day that she was promoted to corporal here in Commissioner's Court and that Chief Knowles handed her stripes. When I asked her what she liked most, she said it's the fact that she gets to work with different agencies. She said, "I learn a lot about the workings of the jail." She said, "I was able to find a career with the county." She had worked other places, and when it came to the county, she said, "I love the stability and the benefits that the county offers." She said that the county has presented a lot of opportunities for her, and she wants to be here until she retires. Sarita, thank you very, very much for your 25 years of service. Next is Christy Gray with the Sheriff's Office. Now, Christy wasn't sure she was going to be able to make it, and so when you see her, thank her for her 25 years of service to the county. Next is Dusty Sanders, County Clerk's Office. I talked with Dusty yesterday. She was coming back from vacation, and she kind of got caught down in the Galveston area with all the rain that was occurring. And when I had talked with her, she had just gotten past Texas City, and she said she had had a little bit of damage just from all the water and everything that they had experienced. But she has been with, she's really been with the county for 27 years, because she's one of those that left a year, and there's a couple other ones out here, left a year and then came back, and so they got penalized. Still hadn't figured that one out. But she, when you see Dusty, thank her for her 27 years of service with the county. Next is Mike Tash with the Sheriff's Office. Mike started off as a clerk and then moved to Belknap as a jailer. He had been in the courts, was back in the jail, had been on patrol. He was in warrants for 6 years and got promoted there to sergeant. Spent some more time back in patrol and warrants, and then was promoted to lieutenant. Spent some time with HIDA and he's now back in patrol. When I asked him about memorable moments, he said he has had a great team and had a great time working in the Lawrence area. And then he just happened to mention that in early 2003 he got shot. And so I said, well, I can imagine that might be a memorable moment. And he was serving a warrant and had been looking for this guy for some time, but apparently this guy was ready, and so he got shot. Did you make a trip there a little bit, Wilder? You okay?
Technology tripped me up again.
But he's okay, and we appreciate very, very much again his service. He said, I've had an opportunity to work with some great people. And people, he said, one of the things that I like most is the way the Tarrant County family comes around you and takes care of each other. He said, I want to thank all the folks in the county, all the people who work for the county, and the way they stood by him when they needed. We appreciate very, very much, Mike, your service. Thank you very much. Next is Charmaine Thomas with the Sheriff's Department. Charmaine thought she was going to be able to make it down, but again, 25 years. She said, it's just a great place to work. I love being here. I never thought that I would be here this long. Her most memorable moment was when she got nominated and won Supervisor of the Year in 2005. So if you see Charmaine, please thank her for her 25 years of service. Next is James Waits, Sergeant he's over at the Family Law Center. There's James. Started out, before he came to the county, he worked for Fort Worth and Crowell and Burleson Police, and then started with the Sheriff's Department at the bond desk as a deputy. Spent some time in patrol. Has been an instructor at the training academy, a background investigator, made sergeant, went back out to patrol, and is now in the judicial area. He said, my most memorable moment was the time that I had to spend as instructor, and then also as a background investigator for those folks looking to come to work for the Sheriff's Department. He said, I really like the security, the benefits that the county has to offer. He said, I have had an opportunity to work for and with some great people. James, thank you very, very much for your 25 years of service to county. Next is Kay Crowell, Constable's office. There she is. Started out in the Sheriff's Department, spent about a year and a half there and left the county, came back in 1988. So she actually has 32 years. Previous statement. She's been with the Constable's office now 15 years. She said most memorable time was the time that she worked with the mental health Lawrence area and then also in extradition. She said there's a lot of great people. They treat you like a family. She said it's just a very good place to work. When I talked with her 5 years ago, they just had a new constable. She'd worked with Jerry Crowder for a long time, and then Dale Clark. She says, I enjoy working with both the constables. Everything was going good. She had 4 grandkids. When I talked with her this morning, she was one of the last ones I talked with. She said, I never thought I would be here this long, but I have enjoyed the job every day. She now has 5 grandkids. The newest is 7 months old. And this one was a preemie, and she said she is a fighter. She was just a little over a pound when she was born. She had open heart surgery. So she said this one's been a fighter, but she said her older brother was also a preemie, and he's a big boy now playing football as a freshman on the varsity team. And so, I related that I had a friend who had a child that was just over 1 pound, and that little boy was a big boy now. She said, I I still love the job and I still love what I'm doing. And she said, I hope I'm here for a lot longer. We, Kay, appreciate very, very much the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. Next is Victor Kraku. Sheriff, there you go. Stand up. She done cheering for you over there. Started out in confinement at Belknap, went to the Corrections Center, and is now first watch at Green Bay. He said, when I asked him about memorable moments, he said, there's been a lot of memorable moments that have happened over the years. He said, what I like most is the broad experience that I have an opportunity to get in working with Tarrant County. He said the family has always been, it's been like a family, very, very supportive. Never thought he would be here this long, but at the same time, he said, it's a good job. And he said, I have enjoyed his experience, or he said he had enjoyed his experience working with the county. Victor, thank you very, very much for the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. Next is Tom Smith, 30 years of service. Started out in the jail, spent about 13 years there, moved over to internal affairs for a while, was in criminal investigations, and is in the property and evidence room of the sheriffs and courts. When I asked him about memorable moments, he just kind of laughed. And then he said, the first night I came home from work, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going back. That's it. She said, I'm not going back. She says, you spent $200 on uniforms. You're going back for at least the first paycheck. And after 30 years, he's still there. He said, I have met a lot of great people. He said, I've worked with a lot of great people. And he said, I feel like what I'm doing is that I'm helping the community. He felt like, again, that he's seen positive changes. He's really happy where he is. When last I talked with him, he had a son that was in college at this place that we often talk about, where they go around barefoot. Arkansas, that's it. I had forgotten for just a moment. Where's Jack? And he was a junior at that point in time. His son is now graduated, and even though he got an Arkansas education, he was able to get a job. And he's working and doing. And I say all this kind of tongue in cheek. One of my bonus grandchildren was in town, and he's actually liking Arkansas. He said he's doing a lot of walking. He said work has been good and has really seen some positive changes lately. Tom, we thank you very, very much for the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. The last person that we have to recognize is Judge Gary Richie, and he's been with the county for 40 years. Judge Richie, I called and talked with him, and he said, that's eviction. Evictions start at 9, and we're not going to be through by 10. And so, again, 40 years of service with Tarrant County, and we need to call and congratulate him and thank him for his service. So that comes to a total of 670 years of service. And we may have fun with me trying to pronounce your names, but what I'm going to tell each and every one of you, and what this court wants to tell each and every one of you, is thank you. Because y'all are the folks that make this such a great place to work, a place where when someone is in need of a hug or in need of help, you're always there to give that help and that hug to them, and to make them feel like that if there's anything they can do to help you, that you'll do that to help them. And we want to thank you for that. You do the same for the people who come in and are looking for service. So thank you very, very much for the respect and the professionalism you do and you show with your job every day, day in, day out. Refreshments back in 504C, as long as Wilder didn't eat all of them. But again, thank you very, very much for your service.
No.
You know, I didn't realize it, but you're right. You didn't have a single employee. I'm sorry, I should have. I wished I had done this a few minutes ago, but it slipped my mind. Commissioner Brooks has something he'd like to say.
Amanda Applin is a long-time and valued employee of Precinct 1. Amanda lost her son a week ago in a jet ski accident at Lake Louisville. Derek was one of the finest young men you'd ever want to see in life. His death is a tremendous blow to his family, but it's also a great loss to this community because of the potential that he had to be an outstanding leader, an outstanding contributor to this community. And an outstanding citizen of the world. I ask you to pray for Amanda and the Applin family. Do what we do. Wrap your arms of love around that family. And Judge, I would ask that we adjourn court today in memory of Derek Applin.
Be good. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm very sorry for that loss. Court members, you have, first off, I'll make a motion that we receive and file the employee recognition.
Second.
A motion second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. You have before you the consent agenda.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have motion second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have two public hearings this morning. If we can go to the public hearings section. Item A, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court do the following. Conduct a public hearing regarding tax year 2018 tax rate for Tarrant County government and announce the date, time, and place of the vote on the tax rate, which is follows. The vote will occur next Tuesday, September 11th, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the morning in the Tarrant County Administration Building located at 100 East Weatherford Street in Fort Worth, Texas. The benchmark tax rates for tax year 2018 are as follows. The effective tax rate is .230119 per $100 valuation. Rollback tax rate is .248133 per $100 valuation. The current tax rate is .244 per $100 valuation, and the proposed tax rate, which is 1 cent less, is .234 per $100 valuation.
I will open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. There appearing to be none, then I will close the public hearing. No action to be taken at this time.
Not at this time, Your Honor. Members of the court, we can go to item B. This concerns a public hearing for the Tarrant County Hospital District's tax rate for tax year 2018. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court do the following. We ask that you conduct a public hearing today regarding the tax year 2018 tax rate for the Tarrant County Hospital District and announce the date, time, and place of the vote on the tax rate, which is as follows. That vote will occur next Tuesday, September 11th, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the morning in the Tarrant County Administration Building located at 100 East Weatherford Street in Fort Worth, Texas. The benchmark tax rates for tax year 2018 for the hospital district are as follows. The effective tax rate is .213546 per $100 valuation. Rollback rate is .230503 per $100 valuation. The current tax rate is .224429 per $100 valuation, and the proposed tax rate, which is the same as the current tax rate, is .224429 per $100 valuation.
I will open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. There appearing to be none, then I will close the public hearing.
Members, if we could now go to report and business under the Administrator's section, item 9A1. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve interim funding for the continuation of the District Attorney's bilingual Spanish language victim assistance program for a period not to exceed 90 days. We believe that this estimated interim funding will be an amount not to exceed $11,500.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell.
Yes, we have one item that we're asking the court to consider this morning, and that is to approve the release of the approximate $7 million of collateral as outlined in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Glenn.
I move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Come on down, Mr. Beecham.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have two items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for RFQ 2018-147 for cervical dysplasia services for the Public Health Department. Recommendation would be to award per the terms of contract awarding to North Texas Area Community Health Centers Incorporated.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Second item is an item in regards to bid 2018-152. It's a bid for the replacement of the existing fire alarm system in our administration building. We received two proposals. One of those did not fill in all the work required to replace the existing system. The second was over budget. We are recommending rejection of both bids and seeking permission to rebid with revised specifications.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have an
Has
interlocal.
the DA's office approved this interlocal?
Yes, Commissioner.
I move approval of item 9J, 1A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments? There being none, then we will move forward to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we could go to the briefing section, item 12A. We'd like to talk to you a little bit this morning about the consolidation of two entities that will perform pretrial services as it relates to those inmates that are housed within the Tarrant County Jail, also those that are released through the magistration process. If I could just start with somewhat of a history. In January of this year, the Sheriff's Department made a determination that rather than that they were going to be taking inmates from the municipal jails that before they had their final magistration and bond setting. Because of that, we have noticed an increase in our jail population. There may be different factors, but one driving factor is that there are now more individuals coming to our jail who have not been magistrated, and a bond has not been set. In fact, prior to the January date, those inmates that we had in our jail, we were magistrating approximately 20% of them because the others had previously been magistrated in the municipalities. Now we magistrate approximately 90% of all the inmates that come into our jail. We still have one or two municipalities that still magistrate the inmates prior to them being sent down to the county, but for all intents and purposes, that has ceased. So now that there is a need for the magistration process because of because they had previously been magistrated in the municipalities, that's one of the reasons why, as we've gone through the budget process, we've asked that the court put $4 million into a special fund that the budget office had recommended, so to not only increase the magistration aspect, but also the supervision of those people that are released on bond or bail. In March of this year, the judges here in criminal cases in Tarrant County, the criminal district and the criminal county judges, or the county criminal judges, had come to the court and had requested that we consider, among other things, that we create a single pretrial agency that would supervise and monitor pretrial release defendants and bond caseloads. And one of the reasons for that is that when you look at how we do bonding, currently, and we're going to try to phase away from this, the inmates that come into jail are basically interviewed twice. One by pretrial services to see if they qualify for a pretrial bond. Criminal Courts Administration also does an interview, and that's to determine indigency. And so it didn't make a lot of sense that we basically interviewed one person twice when we could have had one individual to do that interview. And so the judges felt, and we tended to agree with them initially, that this would be a good idea, but we needed to do some more analysis on that. And so we created a pretrial justice working group. And that working group included the county judge in his office, the county administrator in our office, the criminal district judges, the criminal county judges, the budget director, the sheriff's department, CSCD, pretrial release, and other members of other interested parties that we felt should be in the room to do a thorough analysis of this. We conducted meetings in April, May, and August of that working group, and we also put a subgroup together which consisted of members of our office along with members of CSCD, pretrial release, and also criminal court administration to see if we could not only improve our processes, but also see if we could move individuals quicker through the system if there's a combination of pretrial services.
Was the DA's office involved in these?
No. And the reason is because the magistration process is part of the judiciary. It's not part of the district attorney's office. And so that's why they were not part of this process. And we studied workflow processes in all of these different meetings. As we began to hold meetings with CSCD and pretrial services, we looked at all the functions and the functionalities of what both departments did, and there were a tremendous amount of similarities. We found that in pretrial services, most of those individuals who were released to pretrial services were people that were misdemeanants and maybe first-time offenders, maybe second-time offenders. Those individuals that were sent to CSCD were sent there because they were out on a cash or surety bond, but there were also additional factors or conditions placed on those bonds. And that meant that an individual either had a cash or surety bond and was released, but as part of that release process, they still became and they were actively supervised by CSCD. Quite frankly, that meant that a lot of the felonies that were released on surety or cash bonds, that resided then with CSCD. We also found, working with the District Attorney's Office on a legal authority of pretrial services, on what their authority was to monitor individuals. And pretrial services and CSCD operate under two different statutes. Pretrial release, its authority is greatly limited as compared to CSCD. CSCD has a much broader ability to supervise. Pretrial release is much more limited. It's really there for those individuals that are not out on surety bonds or cash bonds, but mainly on pretrial bonds. Now, the workload on pretrial services and CSCD at this point is about 5,000. And we believe that eventually that it's going to become greater because there is a significant move to have people released from jail that can be supervised so they're not staying in jail. And that's been the goal of the judges and all of us who've been working together on this. When we began our analysis and as we were working through our analysis, one of the things that became very evident that CSCD, as I said, had greater authority. Also, we placed both entities under one agency that we could become much more efficient in a lot of different ways. We have different reporting schemes that CSCD utilizes versus pretrial. We have really two different sets of testing and analysis that we do that we can combine into one now. We've also looked at the risk surveys that we do as it relates to this, the risk assessments that eventually we want to move toward the Arnold assessment because it is considered the platinum of all assessments. We currently use Noble, and with our magistration portal that just opened up last week, the results that we're seeing right now are significant. We think that the Arnold Foundation and the Arnold survey is actually somewhat better because it has a proven track record, and it seems to be the one that is accepted more than any other one.
So why don't we just move to Arnold?
Because, technologically speaking, so what has happened is that prior to June, July of this year, Arnold was not a web-based risk assessment, and now it has moved to the internet, and we are moving to it. We didn't move to it right away because we were in the process of completing our magistration portal, and we had built in the connectors, if you will, to the Noble. But we're working with Arnold. Our intention is to move forward with that, and hopefully within the next 4 to 6 months we'll be at Arnold. So that's the reason. And it was important that we get the magistration portal up, and one reason is because of the timing.
Didn't Arnold also require training from their own people, or there were some other requirements that Arnold had put on there?
There's going to be, at one time Arnold was where you'd have to have every law enforcement agency be a participant. in Arnold. So you're looking at 41 different municipalities plus the schools and things like that, and that was a difficult task. Now they look at the major center that does magistration and the jails, which is the county, and so that gives us greater flexibility. Whenever we move to the Arnold, we're still going to come to you all with a professional services contract to help us move toward Arnold, and also to give us training on Arnold. So yes, there are those elements that we're still working on. Another key was because of the magistration portal. The magistration portal has really, and I keep saying this, has significantly decreased the time we spend per inmate analyzing them and getting them ready to go to the magistration. It's been cut in half. And we believe that, in fact, Mr. Sugar will probably tell you that it's cut the time by 3/4. Instead of 20 minutes to prep someone, it now takes about 5 minutes. And so we think that we're going to have that continued success, and we'll have a different risk assessment tool. We're not necessarily in danger or in jeopardy right now, but we want to move to the platinum form. And there's not going to be a charge to use Arnold, but we just have to have the consulting work done to help us get it established and do the training. So as we continue to go through this process, it became evident that to become more efficient in how we manage our resources and accomplish this task, that we move to a one entity, a single pretrial supervision agency, and our recommendation is CSCD. One of the benefits that CSCD has is that the fees that they can charge for the supervision when there are people that are released that have the ability to pay, that we believe that it will be significant, and it will be able to cut some of our costs as much as $1 million a year. Now that's just an estimate, and we'll need to see what happens over that year. But pretrial by statute is limited to the fee that they can charge. And so with that that analysis, what we are recommending today is that we move forward at the beginning of this new fiscal year with CSCD becoming the single pretrial supervision agency. It's not going to be something that would happen overnight. We've funded pretrial release for an entire year in the FY19 budget because it's going to take time to make that transition, to move those cases, or we just have them complete the monitoring of the 4,000 cases that they currently monitor, and but slowly and surely move everything over to a CSCD-based single pretrial agency. We're going to have some other recommendations. I think it's going to be very important that we move forward with video magistration, something that if we can, even if we do video magistration. We've done video magistration since 1988, when I first came here in 1990, and we can continue to do it today. Our magistrates are in the Curry building, and they magistrate people that are in the large jail, 2 different buildings, and we simply video magistrate, and it works fine. We believe we can push that out to some of the bigger agencies. If we can establish video magistration in Fort Worth PD Jail, which I've already spoken with the city manager about, and he's willing to look at that, and if we can see if we can move forward with Arlington also and North Richland Hills, we're talking probably about 80 to 85% of all the inmates that come into our jail. That doesn't mean we're going to stop all the inmates, but those that can move through the magistration process and be bonded out on a pretrial bond in those entities, then they may not have to come to our back door. And if we can rest assured that we're protecting the public, at the same time not holding someone simply because of their inability to pay, then that should be the right thing. And that is the goal of our entire process here. Anticipating that we might go ahead and move to a CSCD environment, I've asked the budget office to be prepared to move up to $750,000 into their budget beginning October 1 so that they have adequate funds to begin their processes, hire the people that they need. We've also talked with the Criminal Courts Administration We intend to talk with CSCD about transferring some of the employees that we have in pretrial to those different entities if our employees want to do that. As I said, this is not something that starts October 1. It's going to be a process. But the criminal judges have asked that this court give them direction and the assurance that we're going to be moving into a single pretrial entity. So with that, Your Honor, I probably have missed a few things, but with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. My goal today is... Yes, sir.
As you and I have discussed over the past couple of weeks, I fully support going to a single pretrial agency.
Yes, sir.
I just think you picked the wrong one. CSCD employees are not county employees.
That's correct.
We do not direct the work of that agency. Pretrial release, those employees are county employees, and we do direct their work, and they are the ones with experience in releasing people from jail. Yes, CSCD does a bunch of monitoring, and by that we both mean, though you were not clear, electronic monitoring primarily. Case management is not done by either agency currently. I just believe that this process can be better handled by a county agency rather than turning over a bunch of money to the state to handle a county function. It's a philosophical problem for me.
Do the district judges, are you in agreement with the recommendation?
Yes,
we are.
Yes,
we are. And the county judges do.
So essentially, your recommendation is to fold pretrial release department into CSCD, essentially.
Yes, sir.
They don't have a vote up here.
And I guess the question, though, is that right now, pretrial is doing the determination as to the risk survey, and they're also, to some degree, charged with the monitoring of the folks who are released on pretrial. And as I understand this, as we talk about transfer, the monitoring and all of that's going to take place and be done by CSCD, where they are very accustomed to monitoring, and they can charge the fee for doing that. The risk survey part of that deal is actually going to be performed by court administration.
That's correct.
And those employees are county employees. They're doing the county's work right now as it pertains to determination of indigency for indigent defense, and they will be the ones that will be working the surveys from that perspective. And so I see that the employees may ultimately end up going to two different areas. One may be CSCD, and that may be primarily that's where certainly the money that we've set aside would be going, because as you indicated, the indigent defense or the pretrial budget is staying in place, even though some of those folks and many of those folks may end up going under court administration from that standpoint.
That's correct.
I guess the thing that I look at from this and from where I think we began and where we are right now is I do believe that this may end up resulting in there being almost an on-duty risk survey person as well as an on-duty magistrate that says on a 24/7 basis, if somebody's arrested and they're coherent, they're not being arrested for being drunk, and they can answer questions. The survey part of it can be done almost without the interview, and you can determine whether someone is eligible for this, what amounts to, I guess, a no bond release. And if they are, then it goes to the magistrate. The magistrate's ultimately going to make the decision from that perspective. And with regards to the video deal, I see that being something that can be done, as you mentioned, in the major cities, maybe in all 41 cities. Because I will tell you, having served on the indigent defense, the one thing I do know is we put video cameras in some of the smallest counties in this state to do just that type of stuff and that type of work. And that will prevent many of those individuals from maybe having to be transported down here to the county jail, which means that they're probably going to spend at least, well, they're probably going to spend at least one night. We're going to have the book in and we're going to have the book out costs, which we've said that they have to because it's a state licensed jail. So I see that as a way potentially to avoid some of the increased costs that we have borne this past year, and at the same time be able to make this available to people who propose no or share no risk, according to, again, this survey. And that the survey is a survey. Will there be somebody that's exception? There might be, but that's why we ultimately go to the magistrate after we do the survey. And that magistrate, I think, will be able to look and determine, wait a minute, that person needs to come downtown. Maybe they need to come downtown for a mental hearing. Maybe they need to come downtown just for whatever the seriousness of the case is, but that magistrate will ultimately make that decision after they've seen that. And those employees who are filling out that survey, which are currently county employees, will probably continue to be county employees under the court administration area.
That's correct.
Well, first of all, Mr. Manius' presentation did not include a bifurcated process with the Office of Court Administration having one set of duties and CSCD having another set of duties. You just kind of glossed over that.
That is my mistake, Commissioner.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yes, sir.
But in terms of risk assessment, the Arnold Foundation's instrument is not based upon interviews.
That's correct.
So that eliminates one set of problems right there. Depending on who all you assess, do we assess everyone who is arrested?
Yes. Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
And
everyone that is booked into our jail.
My understanding is we assess a number of factors, including the risk of flight, right?
Yes.
And income level?
That would be, the income level would be something where that the Criminal Court Administration does now as it relates to indigency and the need for counsel.
Okay. So I've been hearing complaints and so forth out in the community, and I want to validate some of the things that I hear, that through pretrial release we have let out criminals who are repeated offenders and so forth. So in this Arnold assessment, how does it balance between the severity of the offense versus income versus the risk of flight? How does that work?
So let me make a statement that corrects one of the things that you said. Pretrial release doesn't release anyone. Pretrial release simply works up the documents. It is the magistrate or judge who makes the determination if a person is released or not. It's not pretrial release. They can make a recommendation, but it's that magistrate who makes that decision. We have no authority to release anyone in pretrial.
Right.
The Arnold Foundation has a series of questions that are filled that are populated by data such as, has the person ever been convicted before? Is the person currently charged with other crimes? Those type of things. What is the severity of the crime that the individual has been accused of? And that puts a weighting factor on a recommendation from the instrument itself to the magistrate. It doesn't say you should do this or that. It gives the magistrate information so that the magistrate can make up their individual mind if a person should be released or not. Okay. Now, as far as it relates to indigency, normally that will happen with criminal court administration because they intend to interview everyone also, and they do that for the financial purpose now. And if a person is determined to be indigent, that information will also be forwarded to the magistrate. But neither court administration nor pretrial release nor CSCD have any authority to release. That is simply information that is generated for consideration by the magistrate, and the magistrate is the sole person who determines the release and the amount of bond, if any.
But let me clarify one thing. In the preparation of the survey, while one of the questions may be at that point in time monetary, the determination of indigency is not made at that point in time. The determination of indigency is made only after the individual requests the appointment of an attorney.
That's correct.
So there will still, and there may still be two individual evaluations, one as to whether or not they pose a risk under this Arnold survey and whether or not they would recommend a pretrial release, and then two, later on, if they determine that, or if they pose a question to the magistrate, they have to tell the magistrate. The magistrate is supposed to tell them, if you can't afford an attorney, we will look at appointing you one, and that's at the point in time that they determine whether there's an indigent factor.
But remember that the Arnold survey is not an in-person survey.
I understand that.
So
but when they go to visit the magistrate is supposed to tell them at that point in time that if they cannot afford an attorney, then one will be provided, and if they request that, that's where the indigency determination then begins.
I'm going to need to defer to the judge.
No, the judge is absolutely correct. They're two separate processes.
That's true.
One is to determine the risk to society of letting this person out, and the risk that the person will show up for trial.
And that was my question, is what if those two results conflict one another? Then what?
Then they are resolved within the risk assessment tool. And a recommendation is given to the judges, and they decide.
Well, first off is that
they do have a vote on that.
Well, the tool itself does not make recommendations. It's an assessment that is part of the consideration that a magistrate judge would undertake in evaluating the person's future appearance, danger to the community, ability to make bond. And that's related to, we're looking at these factors based upon the other lawsuits around the state. Okay? So, the Fifth Circuit has given us these opinions in O'Donnell, some of the factors that we need to consider. Now, the process that you're talking about is the gathering of the information that is done by the court administration and under pretrial release. Those individuals are compiling information. They are not making any recommendations specifically to the magistrate judge. Now, the pretrial release also does other things other than just gathering information. They also provide information to the judges in terms of violations of interlocks, making sure interlocks are being installed and things of that nature. Those are judicial functions. The judges are monitoring the defendants while they're out on bond. Now, We can't simply keep people locked up based upon the allegations simply in an arrest. There is a presumption of innocence. And we cannot use bonds as a means of keeping somebody locked up. It is only for the purposes of ensuring their future appearance in court. And so we have to balance those factors. Now, as a judicial officer, I cannot instruct another judicial officer in using their discretion in determining what is an appropriate bond and bond conditions. We have to use our best judgment. Now, the magistrates that we've hired are ex-prosecutors, some are defense lawyers, some have been in Tim Curry's office for many years and now in the subsequent DA's offices. But in terms of their judgment, we have to allow them to use that discretion before we all say that they're not using it appropriately. They have to have a free hand. So, in terms of pretrial release, saying anything to the magistrate judges, that's not correct. The judges are the ones that are determining what is an appropriate bond and ensuring those factors are being adhered to. But let's say it's a DWI. And if it is a DWI, there's an interlock requirement. Those things and other conditions that we ensure that they're complying while they're out. Now, among the things that we also consider, or the judges would consider, is their indigency status, their ability to make bond, their significant ties to the community. Those are other things that are not necessarily out in front as well known until we do some type of question. Now, the question that we're asking is not asking a question to the defendant. He has the right to remain silent. So these tests and assessments you're talking about, and it's an evaluation of their criminal record. And have they appeared in the past or not? Now, based upon that information, we're gleaning certain things out that are part of an assessment that has statistically been used, such as the Arnold Foundation. Now, the Arnold Foundation, you heard earlier, Commissioner Brooks, they wanted to make sure that their test or their assessment is done in such a way that is statistically reliable. And the only way it does that is that it has to be performed a certain way, and that the people had to be trained. Well, we now have an ability to use the Arnold Foundation tool. Before, the Noble test as an assessment was only available to us under the current criteria that we were looking at, because we couldn't go over there and start questioning a defendant who's been under arrest and doesn't have a lawyer appointed to him yet. We can't do that. So hopefully my response answers your questions and also anticipates some of them. Do you have any other questions that you would like to ask of me?
Judge, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
As to Commissioner Wynn's concern, as I understand it, that what are we doing to balance community safety issues versus somebody's likelihood to appear? You said that if there's a conflict, someone's likely to appear, but they are likely also to possibly be a danger to someone in the community, either the alleged injured party or others. And those are factors that the judges are taking into account. The judge, whoever is magistrating, it has the facts of the offense available to them, as well as the probable cause determination right. And we're looking specifically also at domestic violence issues as they arise, because those have specific risk issues as well. And they are looking at somebody's failure to appear and balancing those things. And that they look at the static risk assessment. We keep saying the Noble assessment. Actually, the assessment that we're using is on the platform that Noble provides, but it's not the Noble assessment. It's called the static risk assessment. We're looking to replace that with the Arnold Foundation assessment. They're both good assessments, but I agree that the Arnold Foundation seems to be the gold standard, and that's where we should be headed. We just have not had that available to us yet. But all of those factors should be taken into consideration when setting bond. There are very few offenses or situations in which the judges or magistrates are allowed to set no bond at all and say somebody has to just stay in jail, they're so very dangerous. The first is where someone is charged with capital murder and there's a showing made in court that the death penalty is likely to be assessed. The second is an instance where someone has been charged with a family violence offense and has another family violence arrest. and the state can at that point seek a no bond. Other than that, somebody has to be set a bond, and we have to take into account all of the factors that are under the Code of Criminal Procedure. The risk, the offense facts under the probable cause determination, there's someone's likelihood to appear, and also their financial situation. So even if someone has not requested an attorney, we still have to do a full financial screening at the outset, even without the request for an indigency determination, because that is a factor in bond setting. And then, because we already have that analysis done, we take that same analysis that's already been done. If on down the line they say, hey, I want an appointed attorney, we use that same information that they've already given us. So we don't have to redo the same work over again.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to clarify the record. And that is that my interest in not holding someone in jail just because they cannot write a check to get out predates the lawsuits. My interest in the Arnold Foundation assessment as a way to get to who should be in jail and who should not be in jail predates the lawsuits. The lawsuits merely helped get everybody's attention. That's why we're talking about this, and that's why I'm not out there screaming in the wilderness by myself like I did for so many years. But my interest had nothing to do with the lawsuits.
I agree, Commissioner. The lawsuits have focused everyone on the issue. The issue's been there.
Now, to Commissioner Wynn, I do want to make one other point. By operation of law, there are certain times that defendants must be released due to an indictment not being returned timely. And so there are times and circumstances under the law where a judge does not have a choice but other than to grant a pretrial release, no bond, or not to have a typical bond set. And those are very fleeting, but they do occur. Now, in terms of specific examples, if you can give us, or if you have something that you want us to look into, we'll be more than glad to do that. But to just say broadly that there are times when pretrial release bonds are occurred or personal recognizance bonds occur, there are legal things that could cause that, and the judges have no discretion but to allow the defendant's release under those circumstances. All right.
Okay. Mr. Manios, anything else at this point in time? Any other questions from the court?
You're very welcome.
Thank you, judges.
Not at this time, Your Honor. Our hope is to get some indication if the court is receptive to basically moving to a one agency that would do the pretrial observations and services. That's not a vote because it's on briefing. But I just want to make sure everyone knows I have asked the budget office to put $750,000 into as an initial investment into CSCD.
And again, I hear you do refer again to one agency, and in my opinion, what we're talking about is this being two different. There's part of those folks are going to end up under court administration.
Let me clarify it then.
Please.
I understand what your question is. The supervision aspect, when a person is released, that would be we're seeking that to be CSCD. The analysis of the individual prior to magistration, that would be done by court administration, criminal court administration. I've already had conversations with Mr. Shugart because we have increased their staffing that to see if there is the ability to move some of our people in pretrial over to that organization. So there'll be two different departments that will be doing this. But when it comes to the supervision after release, that would be solely vested in CSCD.
And I feel good about that again, and I hope that if we move to this area again, that I hope we will look very closely at doing as much of the video magistration
Absolutely.
as we can and prevent those folks from being transported downtown where we incur the cost of the booking and at least one night stay in the hotel facility.
Your Honor, that's our goal also. And I believe that's the goal that everyone is moving toward. So that's our request now, is that you realize that there is a $750,000 investment that we've moved over to CSCD, and that your direction is to move forward with one agency that does the supervision after release.
What do you plan to do with those pretrial release employees that don't go to one of these two organizations?
We'll have to simply find another location for them in the county, Commissioner. We have up to a year to do that, because that's why we ask for the funding. Obviously, if there's a vacancy in pretrial, we're not going to fill it.
How many people do you have in pretrial right now?
18? 18 people. And as I said, we're already talking with criminal court administration because those grades, a lot of those grades are the same. And they have the skills to perform the functions that are performed by the criminal court administration. There's some that because of their positions, they don't do field work. But our goal is to roll up our sleeves and try to ensure that none of our employees are disenfranchised.
What grades are most of those folks?
17s.
In pre-trial? They're 17, similar to those in criminal court administration. There's a few clerical, and there's 2 grade 71 supervisors and a grade 74 director. The director is currently vacant.
How many do you have any idea how many 17s we might have throughout the county? A bunch? A few?
Bunch.
A bunch. Okay.
We've had we authorized pretrial 4 additional positions during the FY18 budget. It's my understanding that 3 of those positions were filled by CSCD employees, and our hope is if we can maybe get them back into CSCD. So we've done our analysis on it, and we intend to work very hard to make sure that we don't harm our employees.
Other questions, comments at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we have budget on the agenda yet. If I could just make one comment, and then I'll defer to the budget officer. One of the questions that was asked last Tuesday was some of the requests from the Sheriff's Department. I believe that we have worked out those issues. I've talked with the sheriff, and I appreciate his efforts. I know the budget office has also. The monies that we had allocated for the Director of Intelligence, it was like 36% of that salary. The sheriff has agreed to fund that through forfeiture funds for FY19. I know that there was a request for 6 automobiles or car allowances. The sheriff has come back and said they would prefer the automobiles, and they're requesting 5 rather than 6. And as it relates to the other equipment, we're working with the Sheriff's Department to see if we can secure some grant funding for that, so that is not an issue to be discussed as it relates to the budget anymore. That's off the table. And Debbie, I don't know if you have any other comments.
That pretty much sums it up.
So do we need to approve? As far as the sheriff is okay with all of that?
Yes, sir. GK, the salary of the intelligence director.
Yes.
What about in FY20?
It'll be back for consideration.
We're going to come back and work with the sheriff and make a recommendation in FY20 on that.
You know, and I guess I would say
I've asked the sheriff just to see if he could fund it in FY19 through forfeiture funds, and he's graciously agreed.
And I guess the statement, and we said it last week, or I hope we made it pretty clear, is that person is extremely important to Tarrant County, and that I appreciate very much him agreeing to take that from the forfeited funds I see those funds as being monies that are not local taxpayer, and when we can spend those and spend those down, that saves us from spending local tax dollars. But under no circumstances would I don't think that anybody on this court wants to see that individual feel like that there's any reluctance whatsoever for that position to be filled, whether we fill it out of forfeiture or whether we fill it out of.
And Judge, I'll tell you, there's two different settings or groups of forfeiture funds. One's federal and one's state. We cannot pay salaries out of federal, only out of the state side. And the forfeiture funds that the Sheriff's Department is receiving are diminishing every year because of various factors. We do have, the sheriff believes he has enough money in this year's budget, but we'll need to reconsider that again. Not the position, but where the funding for the position comes when we hit FY20.
It definitely is something that's very critical, I think, to this court.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So do we need a motion at this point in time to approve the
Change it.
resolution?
Yes.
I've got a question.
Okay.
What happened to the sixth vehicle?
And they just asked to remove it. I mean, I think the individual involved has elected to not drive a county vehicle
Or receive a car allowance.
or receive a car allowance.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Now, the last thing we're going to do is actually spread the market and, not market, where'd that come from? The merit and the step increases in the structure out to all the individual departments. From there, we'll reassess where we stand, and any differences that are needed will be either added or subtracted from undesignated. This time, it looks like we'll add some small amount to undesignated. But we'll have back for you next week the approved budget and the setting of the tax rate. On the last Tuesday of September, we'll come back to you with the special purpose budgets.
Thank you, Debbie.
Sure.
Your Honor, that's all we
Judge
have.
Gonzalez, could I see you after the meeting, please?
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll recess our open meeting and proceed to close, discuss items exempted under section 5551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. From our closed session, and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned.